Donald Trump has been extraordinarily effective at tapping into a level of frustration. And somebody once described him as the wrong answer to the right question.
Welcome back to The Unknowns. My name is Charlie Stone, and today we have former four-star General Stanley McChrystal joining us. He is many things, a storied military career, which we'll talk about, but also an author of a new book, a best-selling book called On Character, Choices That Define a Life. General, you asked that I call you Stan. That seems a little weird, but I'll just call you Stan. Are we? Okay, well, you call me Charlie. All right, Stan. So I know it sounds like the master of the obvious, but why is a character so important? What are we missing today that sort of propelled you to author this book?
Let me start with what I think character is. It's the essence of us. It is the most important thing about us. You know, Thomas Paine, the pamphleteer, said that reputation is what men think of us. Character is what gods and angels know of us. So if we say that character is that thing that really defines us, and it's best measured by what we do, how we act, how we interact with people, then it's really the most important thing in life individually, but also in the interaction between people. And that's why I worry that what we've done is we've stopped thinking about it. We've stopped talking about it. We've stopped demanding it from ourselves and in case other people, particularly people that we give power or wealth or celebrity to.
Why do you think that is? I mean, I guess in my first reaction, it's sort of like we forgot about deferred gratification. It sounds like building character is an everyday effort, but the results take longer to show. Do you think we're in a society where we want to be pleased, we want to be satisfied so quickly, and that's preventing us from looking at more long-term growth?
Charlie, I think that is an awful lot of it. And we've rewarded people sometimes for being outrageous. Now, if we go back to previous times, there were always people who were lying, cheating, and stealing and doing things we didn't like. There were evils in society like war and slavery. But there were also a number of norms that dictated how you were supposed to act. And if you violated them, you felt guilty, or your family or your peers or society put pressure on you. And for some reason, we have decided not to keep applying that pressure. And so we're all sort of allowed to be our worst selves if that's our choice.
You had mentioned lying, stealing, and cheating. Is there sort of a protagonist in your mind that is sort of pushing us in that direction?
I've concluded that no single person, even the current president, is the problem. The cause of this thing is us. They are the symptom because we have allowed and we have enabled and we have supported that. So it's our unwillingness to uphold standards in ourselves and of others that allows that symptom to emerge. The beauty, though, is we are the cure. We have agency. The day we get up in the morning and the American people decide, nah, that's not right, anything like that we don't like is completely solvable.
I've seen some other interviews where you're talking about this topic and you ask people to reflect, right, upon who they are and who they should be. Well, if you're just asking people to reflect, is there a larger thing we should be doing as a community, as a nation? Because a lot of people are going to reflect and may just ignore you.
No, that's exactly right. That's, of course, what scares me is if you ask somebody to do something, go somewhere, do something, send money, it's more concrete. This has to begin with reflection because I think each person's got to start by looking in the mirror and making a decision what kind of person they want to be. But then the next step is to talk about it amongst ourselves. Charlie, if you and I have a conversation and say, we're going to try to be a better Stan and Charlie than we were yesterday, and we sort of hold each other to account. Next time I see you, you'll kind of go, Stan, are you doing it? And I think in the small groups we live in, friends and families, that works well. And then at the societal level, I want us to demand it publicly. if a politician gets in front of people on TV and they say something that they know is untrue, and that happens every single day, and we watch it, and for some reason, we let them get away with it because we reached the point we say, well, that's what they do. If we say stop, we don't tolerate that. If we demand something different, then I think we'll get something different.
I think this has happened throughout history, and I'm not pushing this as a religious, but just sort of a story itself. But like Moses came down from the mount with the 10 commandments and said, knock it off. Right? Is it something that we as humans always have to refresh? We always have to go back to those tenets.
There tend to be these rising and falling periods when we want something different. We want something that's almost spiritual. There is a time at which societies can suddenly say that whatever is existing is intolerable, whether it's corruption, whether it's whatever it is. And I think that the lack of character is something that we should claim is intolerable. What I'm saying is stop normalizing it, stop allowing it, stop tolerating it in our society.
I think what you mentioned is vastly interested because I think, love him, not love him, but President Trump tapped into that dissatisfaction, right? We have two-party system that has continually grown the deficit. It's like Coke and Pepsi, and no one else can participate. How do you ensure that when that uprising occurs, there's character behind it?
Yeah, this is the nuance of it, because as you know, when people are dissatisfied, they want change and they become vulnerable to very effective populists or demagogues or people who can spin a yarn that taps into that frustration and that desire to change. But this is a case where I think we need to start at the very grassroots level in our society, at our churches, on our teams, in our schools. I frankly don't want to see a man on horseback ride in and say, I'm here to solve the problem, because I think that's just another problem. I think Donald Trump has been extraordinarily effective at tapping into a level of frustration. And somebody once described him as the wrong answer to the right question. And I don't think that's wrong. I think many of the things that he's tapped into are the same frustrations that you and I have. But what we can't do is underwrite the Taliban or any leader that takes us in a direction, because Adolf Hitler did the same thing. Adolf Hitler's slogan in 1921 was "Make Germany Great Again." And so what we have to do is be more mature and more disciplined than to allow ourselves to follow anyone who just grabs our passions. And that's why character is so important. Character is more than just anger. It's more than outrage. Character is this combination of deeply held beliefs and a personal discipline to live to them. And hopefully those deeply held beliefs include things like integrity, loyalty, respect for others.
Loyalty is obviously key in the military. A general gives the orders, the subordinates follow those orders. In the presidency, what's the difference between loyalty and people who are just sycophants? Like, how do you differentiate that? It sounds as if the presidency should be more, they have a cabinet, there should be more collaboration, but what's the difference between loyalty and just being a yes person?
Yeah, it is not as black and white as people think it is. But in reality, if you take a person who's serving the government, they are serving the Constitution of the United States. They are serving the office of the presidency, or if they're a military officer, serving various commanders and whatnot. They are serving that position, not that individual. In 1936, the Weimar Republic, now turned over to the Third Reich, changed the oath of office for military officers from the state to the Führer, Adolf Hitler, became individual. And so leaders have got to understand their loyalty lies to the Constitution, to the idea of the state and whatnot. Now, at the same time, you do have to be loyal to individuals who are doing tough jobs. And that means that you don't exist to to stab them in the back every day when they get up. They've got to be able to count, if they've been given an extraordinary responsibility, as most senior leaders, particularly a president has, that the people around them are going to be loyal to the efforts that they're trying to make. But that also means that the senior leader has got to adhere to the standards, the laws, the ideals of the Constitution or the nation as well.
You mentioned Adolf Hitler twice in this conversation. Play that out for me. What are you trying to imply, right? That if we don't check this president, we're going to end up there? Like, how does this all play out if people don't start to reflect on character and live with conviction and discipline?
Yeah. I am not comparing Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. They're very different people, different sets. But I am comparing, that was a constitutional democracy. The Weimar Republic in the 1920s, 1930s, Germany, and a very educated country, a civilized country, tremendous history. And yet, within a few years, starting with a constitutionally correct election, they let themselves erode into a dictatorship that threw the world into World War. And so what I'm saying is, it can happen to any country. And you think that things that you believe and the laws that you have and the constitutional safeguards are sacrosanct. They are only sacrosanct as long as you protect them, as long as you respect them. And if you look at the history in the Third Reich, it eroded in that direction pretty quickly. And once it got to a certain point, I think it was impossible for the average German to stop it.
I want to get a little personal with you because I found some of the most fascinating things about you, like anybody, are those moments where you weren't successful, right? You were leading the forces in Afghanistan. You led a reporter into your social event. He came out, obviously, with the article, Runaway General, which eventually led to your resignation before President Obama. You described this sense of being a soldier all your life, and then suddenly 1 second, it's gone. How did you deal with that while maintaining your character?
You're kind to ask, Charlie. It was, of course, big inflection in my life. What happened was we had a story come out from a freelance reporter that was a surprise. I didn't think the story was accurate or fair, but that didn't matter because I'm responsible as a commander not to put things like that on the commander-in-chief, President Obama's desk. And so the fact is, it happened in my command, so I'm responsible, and I have no problem accepting that responsibility. Easy to say. And then when you do it, the implications are, I met with President Obama, and he was gracious and professional, and I offered him my resignation, or I said, if you want me to go back and keep on, I'll do that. And he said, no, I'm going to accept it. And in that moment, and I think he knew it, everything about my life changed because I had been a general, a commander, a soldier, all kinds of things, and suddenly I'm not any of those. And for a period blessedly short, I'm a disgraced general in the U.S. media. Now, again, that's a pretty short period in our U.S. media, fortunately, but the reality is it's not that short in your own mind. And so you get that moment, and that moment isn't an instant, it plays out over some time, to decide what you want to be now. Because you're not what you were, and you got to decide what you want to be. And what I learned with the help of my wife was that the core of me didn't change. I thought everything was gone, and I had to be something completely different. What I found was certain things were gone, and it changed. I wasn't a soldier, and I wasn't a general, but I was still me. I was still the person who had done those things. And it took a while and the generosity of a lot of people to demonstrate that to me. So I had a much firmer foundation to move forward, but we made the decision together, not with a big conversation, Annie and I, but we just made this unspoken agreement. We weren't going to relitigate the past. We weren't going to go back and argue about it. We weren't going to cry about it. We weren't going to complain to people about it because nobody cares. That's the one interesting thing. You care about your problem, but nobody else really does. And instead, we decided to do different things. So I started a business, I started teaching. Ultimately, I wrote 5 books now. And it has been liberating. And, you know, I'm not saying I wish it had happened, but we do have conversations when we say it's one of the best things that ever happened to us because it redirected us for this last phase of my life in a way that we probably would never have gone. And I'm thankful for that.
Not only did the Rolling Stone article come out, and it was actually informational to me because the first time I met you, it was on the Netflix series, I think it was War Machine by Brad Pitt. Did he nail your character, the walk? Were there things that were right? What was wrong? I mean...
Now you're going to see the petty side of me. I have never seen it. And I refuse to watch it because they never talked to me when they were making it. You know, nobody ever consulted. And so I just said, you know, they could have gotten a chance to try to get it accurate. Of course, they weren't making that kind of movie. So I've never seen it. I don't think I ever will. And my wife's never watched it either.
Well, it does an admirable job. I'm sure there's many inaccuracies, but I'm sure Mr. Pitt is going to be very sad. So I'll send him this clip because he'll probably want to have a screening with you, right? Because that's what actors do. They want to like make sure that the people they're representing are accurately reflected.
I do brag that the same actor who played Achilles later played me.
The interesting story in all this is you actually prepared the resignation. I assume it was typed out and you took it to the office.
Yes, sir.
As you look at sort of the cacophony, the arguments, the lack of discipline that some would say exists in the administration, it doesn't seem to be the first instinct from some of these people to draft their resignation and have it ready. Is that character?
That's a great question. I didn't think about it at that point. I thought it was automatically my responsibility to do that. You know, because the option was to go in and say, no, the story's not accurate, it's not fair, I want to fight this or whatever. So I thought the right thing to do was to make it as clean as possible so that the mission could go forward. I do think that in any jobs like this, you should do the job with a complete understanding. It may be your last job. And as soon as something goes wrong, even if you didn't cause it, if you are in a responsible position, you should take responsibility for it. And so I think there is no dishonor in accepting responsibility for failure, because we all do. I think it is less admirable to either deny it or to not accept responsibility and therefore try to continue to skirt on.
As I was coming up, there was always a standard of we wanted to avoid the appearance of impropriety, not actual impropriety. Do you think that's something that we're missing now?
Well, I do. And I think that it has eroded a lot. I think there's a lot of people get caught doing something wrong and they just go, no, I didn't. And amazingly, they get away with it. Pretty public figures, and they just, by denying what is well known to be true or proven to be true, and they just do it, and it sort of just stops there. So I'm not comfortable with that.
More questions. I would be remiss if I didn't ask your opinions on some of the things I think you're an absolute expert on. Ukraine, Putin, like where does that go? Like, should we be supporting Ukraine? And if so, why is that important?
I think that Vladimir Putin is extraordinarily dangerous. And I think you could compare him to many of the dictators through history who have a desire to use raw power, and he's shown that over and over. And he's trying to recontrol Ukraine. He's trying to either take as much of it, the landmass, as he can, and essentially emasculate the rest of it so that Ukraine is not effectively part of Europe or NATO or any other organizations. I think we have to stop him. I think that he has to fail. I don't think he is strong. We tend to think of Russia as the Soviet Union, and it is not. We tend to compare this situation with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it is not the same. And in my mind, Russia is a much weaker, and Vladimir Putin has been playing a weak hand very effectively. I think the West, or the world, but the United States leading, ought to stand up and ensure that Putin fails in Ukraine for two reasons. One, because I think Ukraine deserves that as a sovereign nation. And two, I think he needs to be defeated, stopped in this case, so that the Baltic states and other Eastern European states aren't in constant danger.
I want to take you back to when Ronald Reagan was serving his last day in office. He gave sort of a recommendation about immigration. He was talking about how great America was. You know, if you want to go to Germany, you'll never be a German. If you go to Italy, you'll never be an Italian. But whoever you are, wherever you are in the globe, you can come to America and become an American. This is a conservative president. Do you think we've missed the ball on how diverse and how immigration and proper immigration make this country better?
I think we've taken a populist slant on the issue, and we have decided to demonize different people. Now, that's not new in American history. Remember that we did it to African Americans, we did it to the Irish, did it to Italians all at certain periods, did it to the Chinese. And there was a demonization of groups because people thought that there was a reason to do that. And we've now sort of lumped together immigrants. Now, let me be clear. I don't believe in illegal immigration. I don't believe in anything that begins with illegal. And I don't think that just because you stay somewhere for a while and don't get caught, that suddenly makes you legal. So I am bothered by the concept of illegal information or immigration. But I think that we need to have the kinds of immigration laws and processes that fit our culture, that are welcoming, that are fair, that do the things that we want to do as our nation while still defending our sovereignty, which we have to do.
Last question, and I bet you that I'm correct on this. I assume your wife, Annie, of 48 years, is the far better half of the two of you. Would that be a fair assessment?
You know, my staff used to refer to the Annie effect, and whenever Annie was around, I was a better commander, which is, you think, well, that's a distraction and whatnot. No, she's just got an effect, and many of us have partners that do that for us. And if you're blessed with that, the thing I think you should do is shut up and listen.